Red Bull turned a routine Pirelli tyre test into one of the season's biggest news stories with a single press release. Daniel Ricciardo has returned to the Formula 1 grid with junior team AlphaTauri, replacing Nyck de Vries and putting Red Bull's Sergio Perez under enormous pressure to improve his form. Let's see what trouble has cooked up for Daniel Ricciardo. It's a remarkable turn of events, given Ricciardo's long-held desire to take the entire year off. It was another chapter in Red Bull's history of incredibly harsh driver decisions, with de Vries letting go just 10 races into his rookie season with the team, effectively ending his F1 prospects for the time being. Ricciardo tested the 2023 Red Bull at Silverstone on Tuesday, and things moved quickly. According to ESPN, Red Bull CEO Christian Horner called team advisor Helmut Marko about an hour into the race to tell him how impressive the pace was. Marko returned the call shortly after to inform Horner that he had just fired de Vries, though the Dutchman is said to have realised the writing was on the wall on Sunday evening after the British Grand Prix. Following the Marko call, several prominent Dutch journalists were alerted to the situation, and the story broke out around midday Tuesday. That compelled Red Bull to make an abrupt announcement that afternoon, despite the company's desire to make the announcement later in the week. Ricciardo's pace was impressive by all accounts. Ricciardo's best lap was reportedly fast enough to put him on the front row of the grid for the British Grand Prix 4 days earlier, though the times differ. According to one source present at the test, comparing headline times was like comparing apples and oranges because the track conditions, weather conditions, and fuel loads were all different. Ricciardo was also testing the 2024 Pirelli range rather than the 2023 Pirellis that Max Verstappen used to claim pole position last Saturday. But in any case, Red Bull was blown away by what they saw from a driver who many suspected was damaged goods after his troubles at McLaren. It was exactly what Red Bull had hoped to see, and it was why, behind the scenes, Ricciardo had prioritized the test from the moment it was announced. He had treated the test like an audition for a race seat, and his performance was what sealed the deal. Horner is said to have been particularly impressed. Horner stated earlier this year that Ricciardo had developed bad driving habits since leaving Red Bull, which the team had noticed during his early simulator sessions. Horner has also stated on numerous occasions that Ricciardo, who will race for McLaren in 2021 and 2022, will be unrecognizable from the man who won 7 races for Red Bull between 2014 and 2018. Ricciardo's lap times were the final piece of the puzzle in deciding to run with him in place of de Vries. While Ricciardo was initially opposed to racing in 2023, it is believed that his position changed over the Silverstone weekend as the reality of the de Vries situation became clear. While de Vries was initially told he had until his home race in Zandvoort in August to turn things around, that soon changed to the Austria Silverstone leg of the races. A decision had to be made all of a sudden. If Ricciardo sticks to his guns about waiting until 2024, he risks Red Bull junior Liam Lawson coming in, doing a great job and taking that seat in the long run. Ricciardo and those close to him have always known that Red Bull would never promote him directly to the top team. Horner is said to have told Ricciardo as much over dinner earlier this year when the Austrian stated unequivocally that he wanted to race for Red Bull again. The conversation had a positive impact on Horner, who began to see Ricciardo joining AlphaTauri as a simple way to move on from de Vries, whom he had opposed to the company signing in the first place. It was AlphaTauri or bust for the Australian, who told ESPN last month that the fairy tale ending to his career would be a return to Red Bull. Ricciardo sees this as part of a long game that will culminate in that fairy tale move back to Red Bull. Furthermore, while preparing for the Silverstone test, Ricciardo realised how eager he was to get back into an F1 cockpit. Speaking with Ricciardo this year, whether at the team's New York car launch in February or in the months since, it is clear that the weight he was carrying during his McLaren tenure has lifted. Ricciardo has been able to gain a fresh perspective on racing in his time away, much like Kevin Magnussen did when he returned from a year out to race for Haas in 2022. Red Bull is in an ideal situation. Whether the team admits it or not, it puts pressure on Perez, whose form has been in a downward spiral since finishing second at the Miami Grand Prix in May, and serves as a stark reminder that a ready-made replacement awaits him if he fails to turn things around. Ricciardo's performance will be required to validate this threat. Expectations for overall results will be low, given that AlphaTauri may have the worst car in F1 right now, but Ricciardo's performance will be closely scrutinized within the team. His first task will be to do something he struggled to do with Lando Norris at McLaren: beat new teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Multiple sources have told ESPN that Perez is currently safe, and this is supported by what Horner has publicly stated. His position may be aided by the fact that Max Verstappen could win the Constructors' Championship on his own this year, but it is also true that Red Bull was never going to do something as drastic as cut Perez before the end of his 2024 contract. However, there is clearly growing dissatisfaction with the situation, and if rival teams become more competitive in 2024, they cannot afford to have Perez in this form. They've now given themselves a backup plan in case things don't improve. Ricciardo's infectious personality keeps him popular in the team, and if he returns to his old form, he's about as good as a replacement as you could want for a championship-chasing team. It is worth noting that Red Bull, like everyone else, is well aware of the trend of what happens to Verstappen's teammates. Pierre Gasly lasted 6 months before being demoted, Alex Albon struggled to replicate Verstappen's performances, and the team still feels guilty about letting him go when they did. Perez is currently struggling. Horner believes the Mexican driver is overthinking and driving too fast. Even if you go all the way back to 2018, the same pattern was emerging at the end of that season. Ricciardo never won a podium for Red Bull since signing his Renault contract for 2019 during the 2018 summer break, while Verstappen won 7, including the Mexican Grand Prix. Horner suggested at the time that Ricciardo's move to Renault was him trying to avoid a fight with the improving Verstappen. With all of this in mind, it is understood that Horner is hesitant to replace Perez, who was widely regarded as one of the grid's most underappreciated talents before joining in 2021. With his relentless pace and unwavering confidence, Verstappen has evolved into the ultimate teammate killer, which Red Bull will have to manage for the foreseeable future. According to conversations at Red Bull this season, Horner is correct in stating that a clean weekend or two for Perez should clear the slate in the short term. There's also an intriguing internal dynamic at work, with Marco admitting last month that Horner was correct to question de Vries' suitability for the company's second team. Marco is known as the godfather of the Red Bull driver program, and it was his insistence to detry Mateschitz in 2015 that he signed a 17-year-old Verstappen to Toro Rosso, which is now AlphaTauri, that prevented the Dutchman from joining Mercedes. The de Vries fiasco has harmed his reputation as a driver's scout. Please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to get instant notification of upcoming videos.